Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Live at 4 on this Tuesday afternoon. Waiting for the big storm.
Waiting for the big snow. We're going to get an update from Gary in just a second, and we're going to be taking your calls in just a little while for Farm Director Pam Yonke.
Yeah, she'll be in the studio if you have any ag-related questions or Packer questions, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
Pam can answer those too, so that's coming up. But first, here's what is making news today. The snow is still on its way. Gary, Amanda, Quintana, and Keely Arthur will all have reports on what's happening out there.
The U.S. Supreme Court clears the way for the Pentagon to bar enlistment by people who have undergone a gender transition.
And so long, Miller Park, at least the name. The Brewers say the stadium is getting a new name.
Let's take a look outside this afternoon. Roads are still a little slippery and wet.
Yeah, a little freezing drizzle, a little light snow, but
quiet right now on the patio.
Yeah, well, the birds are out there. Some activity. Just the start are the weather words. I guess we're in for a long string of old man winter. And old man Gary Cadalti's in the backyard with the latest conditions.
This forecast is aging me just as we go through it, because every time you turn around, we have snow and then more cold, and then more snow and then more cold. That seems to be the pattern. Let's start out by taking a look at the alert days. Still have an alert day in for tonight into tomorrow morning for occasional snow, about 3 to 5 inches of accumulation tonight, for a storm total of about 5 to 10 inches by noon tomorrow. So there'll be a little more accumulation tomorrow. The snow may hang on till around midday tomorrow before it really starts to wind down. Then we have alert days in the forecast for Friday and Saturday. This is not for the faint of heart. Wind chills 35 below zero, or maybe even a little colder by Friday morning. Saturday morning, wind chills down to about 30 below zero. Actual low temperatures between 10 and 15 below zero. Daytime high temperatures struggling to get above zero, and wind chills staying below zero all day long. On Doppler track, the snow has been breaking out in patches. So some areas have been getting, a quick burst of snow. Other areas, like in the backyard right now, we just have some flurries and some freezing drizzle. Farther to the south, there's some freezing rain across northern Illinois. It's starting to rapidly change over to snow, and as that area of heavier moisture lifts northward, we'll see the snow pick up in intensity over the next few hours. Notice visibility. Madison right now, 4-mile visibility, but down to a mile in Janesville and 2 miles in Monroe. So that's where the heavier snow is. Waukesha right now at a half-mile visibility in moderate snow. We've shifted the snow total south a little bit and expanded the area a little bit so that about 5 to 10 inches over much of our viewing area. Areas north and west of Camp Douglas and Wisconsin Dells, probably a little bit less. That area has actually been downgraded to a winter weather advisory. The rest of southern Wisconsin under winter storm warnings into tomorrow. High temperatures today so far, lower 20s, and current temperatures are right around those levels. They'll be slow to fall for this evening. Winds right now very light, but those winds will shift to the north as you see out in Minnesota and Iowa, and that'll draw in the colder air. So wind chills right now not much of a factor, but by tomorrow morning look for temperatures to drop into the upper teens. We'll see light snow continue overnight into tomorrow and then probably end about midday tomorrow. Tomorrow's high temperature at 22. Now, as we take a look at first alert traffic, one good thing we've seen so far is people have been pretty good on the roads. Not a lot of traffic right now on the Beltline, so it's moving pretty quickly. The roads seem to be treated, so they're just wet. A little bit of a slowdown westbound on the Beltline near Monona Drive. Heading south of Madison, I-3990 down toward Beloit, I-94 toward Milwaukee. Right now, traffic moving pretty much at the posted speeds as they are on the interstates heading north and west of Madison. I-90-94 through the Dells, 39 up into central Wisconsin, and US 151 through Dodge County. But again, as the snow starts to pick up in intensity, those travel conditions will deteriorate. I'll have more details in weather in a few minutes.
All right, we'll check back in a little bit. Thank you, Gary.
Our Amanda Quintana is live out on the roadways to see how the snow is impacting drivers right now. Amanda, what's going on?
Yeah, well, it is definitely slippery out here. We are out on the Beltline. We just passed the Verona Road exit, and we're actually behind a plow right now. You can see that they are salting these roads. They are getting ready for when that snow starts to get heavier. Right now, it's still that light snow, even a drizzle that we're feeling, and that's making the road slippery. Like Gary said, a lot of the Beltline is moving pretty fine right now. If you look at 511 Wisconsin, it's all in green, which means cars are moving fast. But then if you look at the winter conditions, every road is purple, which means there are slippery conditions. So we can definitely feel it here. And, as that snow picks up, it's probably going to get worse on roads like this. I know the Sheriff's Office has put out their tips: drive slow, keep a safe distance in front of you until the next car. So all of those tips are things to keep in mind tonight.
That thin drizzle is just enough to really slick things up and glaze over your windshield. So you be safe out there, Amanda. You and photographer Jim Rader, too. We'll check back in a little bit.
County and city crews are trying a lower sodium diet this winter season.
They're cutting back on the amount of salt they use to de-ice the roads. Keely Arthur is out on the weather patio to explain why. Keely?
Well, when you live in a place like Madison, you really have to keep the balancing act between keeping the lakes salt-free and the, roads very snow-free, rather. And so the city has 32 trucks. Each one spreads 9 tons of salt, meaning 2,000 tons of salt is entering our Madison roadways each storm. A Streets Division spokesperson says that's a lot less than even 5 years ago, believe it or not, and they're hoping to continue cutting back.
Come next year, we're going to put some scales at all of our facilities so we know precisely how much salt we're putting down. And with the GPS technology that we're getting on our trucks, we're going to know precisely where that salt is going, so we can get some more accountability across the board.
City and Dane County crews also use brine, a 23% salt and water solution, to help cut back on the salt. And the big question is, does cutting back on salt lead to less safety on the roads, slicker roads? The city says no. They don't use salt as much, but they do put a lot of sand down. So even though you might see snowy roads, that's going to be combined with the sand, and you're going to still have a lot of traction. So as long as you're going the speed limit, you should be okay.
The sand does help. Keely Arthur live in the backyard patio. Thank you.
Thank you, Keely. Governor Tony Evers is set to give his first State of the State address in just a few hours.
We are learning more tonight about what he will talk about in that speech. Chief political reporter Jessica Harp is live at the state capitol to tell us how this may tie into the state budget. Jess?
Well, yeah, we've seen some excerpts of the speech this afternoon, and we know through those excerpts tonight that Governor Evers is set to call on lawmakers to take up the budget that his administration will craft and not craft their own. Lawmakers have been threatening to do that this year, especially if some policy items are included that they have called non-starters, like including a Medicaid expansion in Wisconsin. We know Evers will reaffirm his call for 2/3 funding for public schools tonight and ask the legislature to, quote, focus on priorities rather than being distracted by division.
I think there are a lot of things that I would love for him to say tonight. If he picks the tone of partisan rhetoric and divisive issues and trying to somehow say, here's all the liberal checklist that I want to go off of, well, that'll be really disappointing.
Well, I'm looking for him to continue to build on the tone that he has set over the first few weeks of his administration. That's a positive one, a civil tone where we get back to solving the problems of the state and we invest in the priorities of the state, something that we really haven't seen for 8 years.
The legislature has been in session today, hotly debating a bill to cover pre-existing conditions in Wisconsin should the Affordable Care Act be permanently overturned. We also know that amongst the guests, where there are always a gallery full of guests at the State of the State address, among them tonight will be UW band director Mike LeCrone, who announced this year that he would be retiring from that position. We know via those excerpts that Evers' speech will say tonight that LeCrone, quote, embodies the soul of our campus and the spirit of our state.
That he does.
That's for sure. Yeah. Jessica Arp reporting live from the Capitol. Thank you, Jess.
And Republicans say they are amending the pre-existing conditions bill that lawmakers are debating right now. Speaker Robin Vos says Republican lawmakers made some changes Governor Evers suggested, including eliminating yearly and lifetime caps. But Democrats complain the GOP measure does not go far enough and say if Republicans really wanted to protect pre-existing conditions, they would withdraw Wisconsin from a lawsuit to disband the Federal Affordable Care Act.
The Supreme Court has voted 5-4 to allow the Trump administration to restrict transgender military service, while challenges to the policy make their way through the lower courts. Natalie Brand has the latest.
Blake Dreeman is an active duty Navy lieutenant commander and is openly transgender.
I've deployed 11 times, 2 while I was transitioning.
He says he's disappointed the Supreme Court will allow the Pentagon to limit transgender military service, at least for now.
We go back to an effective don't ask, don't tell, where they can, they have to be in the closet.
Back in July of 2017, President Trump tweeted the military would not allow transgender individuals to serve in any capacity, reversing an Obama-era policy.
We're ending the ban on transgender Americans in the United States military.
Today's court decision means the administration can move forward with a revised version of its plan, barring transgender people unless they serve in their biological sex and do not seek to undergo a gender transition. abortion.
The high court split 5-4 along ideological lines to allow the policy to take effect while lower court legal challenges continue.
Reaction from critics has been swift. In a statement released Tuesday, DNC Chair Tom Perez said in part, this ban is nothing more than bigotry codified into law and an insult to all who have worn our nation's uniform. Dreeman says the plan will not stop transgender individuals from serving their country.
As service members, we're trained to continue on and continue to serve, and we'll continue to do so until told otherwise.
The Pentagon maintains the policy is not a ban on service by transgender persons and said it's critical the department be allowed to implement personnel policies it determines are necessary. And Natalie Brand, CBS News, the Supreme Court.
President Trump has said transgender individuals present a considerable risk to military effectiveness. 10 years ago, it was estimated there were about 15,000 transgender individuals on active or reserve duty.
Neither President Trump nor Democrats in Congress appear any closer to a compromise that would end the 32-day-old partial government shutdown. Senate Republicans will introduce a bill to end the shutdown that incorporates Trump's offer to break the logjam. The president's plan includes 3 years protection for some refugees and so-called dreamers. It also includes $5.7 billion for a border wall. Democrats are demanding the president reopen the government before negotiations can begin.
By this coming week, people may be out of their home because landlords may or may not say, okay, we'll wait for our money.
Quit using us as your pawns. Get down to your work that you're supposed to be doing.
A deal would have to be reached by midnight tonight in order for federal workers to receive their next paycheck on time, and there is no sign that will happen.
On the anniversary of the Roe versus Wade decision, pro-life supporters took to the state capitol to protest abortion. About 50 people marched with signs suggesting Wisconsin abolish abortion and asking people to choose life. They also brought diapers to donate before going inside to ask legislators to pass a state income tax credit for adoption expenses, making the option more appealing. Many March for Life rallies happened across the country last weekend, including a large one in Washington, D.C. One man says he expected counter-protesters to show up today, and he'd like to talk to them.
We can agree to disagree, but if we could place something into their minds, into their hearts, that just think about it, don't think if you can't think of it for a Christian value, if you could just think of it as for the good of the nation.
We're actually not interested in discussing abortion rights. We think that they just need to be guaranteed. It's not a conversation. It's about my personal bodily autonomy, and I'm not discussing it with him or anybody else. It's for me to decide, and that's sort of the end game for Madison abortion defense as far as we're concerned.
About a dozen counter-protesters were there chanting about a woman's right to choose. They hope Governor Tony Evers will not only protect abortion rights, but expand them and lift the ban for state funding to be used for abortion, giving the option to low-income families.
Police in Paris have arrested Grammy-winning singer Chris Brown on suspicion of rape. Brown was taken into custody after a 24-year-old woman filed a rape complaint against him. The woman says she met Brown and his friends at a nightclub in Paris last week and went back to Brown's hotel suite where the alleged rape took place. The recording artist was in town for Paris Fashion Week. Paris investigators have 2 days to decide whether to let Brown go or file preliminary charges. Brown's publicists have not commented on the claims.
The home of the Milwaukee Brewers will be renamed for the start of the 2021 season. American Family Insurance will take over the naming rights when the Miller Coors deal with the Brewers expires in 2020. Miller Coors said American Family pitched an incredibly rich offer for those future naming rights to the ballpark.
For the Brewers, a partnership of this magnitude means several things. It's an alignment of two great Wisconsin brands. It's a partnership with a company that has active, intense involvement in the community and cares about diversity, inclusion, its citizens, and making it a better place to live and work. It's a relationship with a very sophisticated Fortune 500 company that understands marketing and will align with our brands. And not unimportantly, it's a collaboration of two dynamic companies with a passion for sports and understanding of the importance of sports in our community.
Miller Park opened in 2001 and replaced Milwaukee County Stadium.
As for the future name of the ballpark, well, that'll be announced at a later date. But I think for most, it'll always be Miller Park. It's still the Sears Tower in Chicago.
That's true. For a lot of people,
Yeah,
that's very true.
Well, still to come at 4, it's the movie's biggest night.
And the nominees for this year's Oscars were announced this morning.
This year's Oscar nominations include some firsts. I'm Chris Martinez with a look at the nominees.
Welcome back. A tentative deal has been reached that could end the 6-day teacher strike in the nation's second largest school district.
Teachers in Los Angeles announced the tentative agreement after a 21-hour bargaining session. The agreement appears to hit many of the teachers' demands and was welcome news as the teachers celebrated. It includes a 6% raise for teachers, lower class sizes, and more nurses and counselors in schools. The walkout created chaos in schools responsible for the education of nearly 500,000 students.
Stocks took a hit on Wall Street amid concerns of global growth slowing down. The Dow Industrials fell 301 points, closing at 24,404. The NASDAQ Composite Index dropped 136. The S&P 500 was off 37. Well, the nominations were announced this morning for the Academy Awards.
And history was made in the Best Picture category. Chris Martinez reports from Hollywood.
Marvel's Black Panther becomes the first superhero movie to earn a Best Picture Oscar nomination. The blockbuster is facing off against Roma, the first Netflix film to score a Best Picture nod. The movie from Mexico's Alfonso Cuarón earned 10 nominations.
I am the queen, but you are mad.
It's tied with the period comedy drama The Favorite for the most nods. Rounding out the category are A Star is Born, Green Book, Black Klansman, Bohemian Rhapsody, and Vice. A Star is Born grabbed 3 acting nominations for Lady Gaga, Bradley Cooper, and supporting actor Sam Elliott. Gaga goes up against Yalitza Aparicio from Roma, The Wife's Glenn Close, The Favorite's Olivia Colman, and Melissa McCarthy from Can You Ever Forgive Me. Some consider Bohemian Rhapsody's Rami Malek as the frontrunner for lead actor after winning the Golden Globe for playing Freddie Mercury. He squares off against Bradley Cooper, Vice's Christian Bale, Willem Dafoe, and Viggo Mortensen.
Cooper, a first-time filmmaker, was snubbed for Best Director, but Spike Lee just earned his first nomination in the category after 30 years in the business.
Hello, this is David Duke.
His film, Black Klansman, also earned a Best Supporting Actor nomination for Adam Driver. Chris Martinez, CBS News, Hollywood.
The Academy Awards air live February 24th, and this year the show is going without a host after comedian Kevin Hart was forced to withdraw over some past homophobic tweets he made years ago.
Interesting approach. We'll see how that works.
Yeah, I know.
All right, well, coming up after weather, so what? Says who?
No, really. Non-answers to questions being asked in the nation's capital. That's coming up after Gary's forecast.
Take a look at this. Who needs a dentist when you have a sled and a string? 6-year-old Atticus slid backwards on a sled down a hill in California with a tooth tied to the string flies, boom, right out of his mouth. After the successful extraction, the tooth fairy leaves Atticus $1 A small
Oh,
toy. That's one way to do it,
That's
right,
a
Gary?
brave little
Better than
kid.
being stuck with a dental bill like the rest of us.
There you go. And it gets a little dry down the hill at the same time.
Yeah, well, there'll be plenty of snow, I think, for a lot of sledding over the next couple of days. Problem is it going to be warm enough to enjoy it? It's going to be bitterly cold after the snow ends. I'll take a look at how much snow to expect and how cold it'll get in just a few minutes. Yes, winter is here. The question is, how much winter are we going to get? Still have an alert day in the forecast for tonight into tomorrow morning. Now, so far we've only picked up about a ½ inch of snow here at the station. Some areas have picked up around an inch, but there's also been some freezing drizzle as well. So there's a little thin layer of ice underneath the snow. You know, having a little less snow and a little more ice is not a good combination either. But we're looking for about another 3 to 5 inches of snow tonight, and then another 1 to 2 inches during the day tomorrow, for a total of about 5 to 10 inches through much of southern Wisconsin. Then we have alert days in the forecast for Friday and Saturday for bitterly cold temperatures. Look at these low temperatures dropping to between 10 and 15 below zero. But with the winds being brisk, we could be looking at wind chills as cold as 30 to 35 below zero Friday and Saturday morning. Daytime high temperatures barely getting above zero on Friday and only in the middle single digits on Saturday, and wind chills during the day staying below zero. As we look at snow totals, again, we're looking at this 5 to 10 inch swath. There'll be a band of heavier snow somewhere in there, but it's hard to predict exactly where it's going to be. Other areas will definitely be in the 5 to 7 inch range with that slightly heavier snow. And you can see the snow really starting to expand just over the last couple of hours. We'll widen out the view to the south. Rain is changing to freezing rain and then to snow pretty rapidly near the Wisconsin-Illinois state line. South of the state line, there's been a lot of freezing rain. and you see those visibilities starting to drop now to the south. So as that heavy, more significant area of precipitation lifts to the northeast, the visibilities will drop, indicating that the snow is picking up in intensity. Winter storm warnings remain in effect from eastern Iowa through southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois. They have been dropped from areas north and west of Wisconsin Dells, downgraded to a winter weather advisory for slightly lesser amounts of snow in that area. The computer models still in pretty good agreement. The RPM computer model we use for our day-to-day forecasting here shows the heaviest snows just to our south and east, somewhere in the 4 to 6 inch range. But the main National Weather Service computer models, the North American mesoscale showing about 8 to 9 inches through much of southern Wisconsin, the European computer model about 8 to 10 inches of snow, and the GFS computer model somewhere around 9 to 10 inches of snow right through the Madison area. So somewhere in this area there's going to be a swath of pretty heavy snow, and the rest of us will still get a fair amount of snow. Then after that, we have to look at the bitter cold wind chills. This is Friday at 12:30 a.m. Look at the wind chills. By early Friday morning, 6:30 a.m., 41 below zero predicted here in Madison. That is dangerously cold. And during the day, those wind chills staying below zero, like to 15 to 20 below zero. Saturday morning, back down to around 30 to 35 below zero. And then during the day on Saturday, those wind chills staying below zero. Not until later Sunday morning do the wind chills get back up above zero. But the next surge of cold air is already waiting in the wings to come down for Monday, following another winter storm potential from late Sunday into Monday of next week. So they're just lined up, one right after another. Live view from the Edgewater Skycam in downtown Madison. Just getting some flurries right now in Madison. High today 23, low temperature 14, pretty close to the averages. Right now 23 with light snow falling. The air is calm. We're kind of near the area of low pressure, but as those winds shift to the north, they'll pick up in speed later on tonight and the wind chills will drop. Temperatures right now teens and 20s for the most part, right around freezing just to our south. That's where the freezing rain potential is a little bit higher. And the wind chills, you can see them already starting to drop where the winds are picking up across western Minnesota. The storm system coming together, the precipitation breaking out very rapidly just over the last few hours. A lot of it in the form of rain down into Missouri and Illinois on the warm side of the storm, but you can see it's mainly snow from Wisconsin back all the way down into Kansas and Nebraska. So once it starts snowing and we get the snow in earnest, it's going to snow for a while. As the storm tracks to the northeast, that snow will track right along with it. So our forecast includes winter storm warnings for much of the viewing area till 9 a.m. west of Lone Rock until noon for the rest of southern Wisconsin. Low of 18 tonight with occasional snow, a little bit of freezing drizzle possible this evening. Tomorrow's high 22 with the snow ending in the morning, some clearing late in the day. As we look at future track, you can see that snow becoming steady overnight and then gradually during the morning hours start to taper down to flurries and then end with some clearing late in the day. Then by tomorrow night, temperatures drop into the single digits, and on Thursday stay in the teens before another blast of really cold air arrives, and that'll probably happen sometime as we head into Thursday night and Friday morning. 5 to 10 inches of snow through much of southern Wisconsin, 7 to 10 day forecast. Again, bitterly cold air for Friday and Saturday. More snow from late Sunday into Monday, followed by another shot of bitterly cold air, followed by another shot of snow after that. So it just seems like it's one thing right after another. We're in that pattern. Now that we have snow on the ground, of course, it can stay cold for a while. Yeah,
41
the winds,
below zero, though.
That's, that's warning criteria for wind chill warning, so we'll keep an eye on that.
Snow is coming. Don't be lulled into complacency. All right, Gary, thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Did President Trump talk to Michael Cohen about his congressional testimony?
Well, according to Rudy Giuliani, so what? CNN's Jeannie Mose has a rundown of other examples of question quashing in Washington.
It's that last-ditch line of defense, 2 words uttered dismissively to quash any question.
And so what if he talked to him about it?
Rudy Giuliani saying...
So what?
When asked if President Trump talked to Michael Cohen about his congressional testimony...
Well, so what, right?
Had reporters saying, what? But so what has lots of cousins, for instance. So without what?
2/3 of Americans say it's not worth fighting.
So?
And Michael Cohen himself, back in the day when he had candidate Trump's back, had his own 2-word comeback.
But you guys are down, and it makes sense that there would...
Says
polls.
who?
Most of them. All of them?
Says who?
But so what has another close relative, one President Trump seems especially fond of.
Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares?
The president professed not to care, even when told Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called him a racist.
Who cares?
The View co-host Joy Behar was often portrayed on SNL by Fred Armisen, saying,
Who cares? So what? So what?
while Anthony Scaramucci likes to elongate his what?
So what?
And Hillary uses more elevated language to say pretty much the same thing.
What difference at this point does it make?
It's one thing for Pink or Metallica to sing it. But for politicians, it's often the retort of last resort.
Says who?
Me, Jeannie Mose.
Who cares?
CNN.
So what?
New York.
Who cares?
All right, it's a different time, that's for sure. Well, putting money into a 529 college savings plan like EdFest can be a key for smart financial planning.
But as we find out next, Consumer Reports says how you take the money out could be equally as important. That's when Live at 4 continues. There's a live look at Langdon Street. Today's the first day of the spring semester.
Students are all back.
On the UW campus. Roads look a little slick, but not too bad,
No, not too bad
right now. Parents who've been saving for years know the advantages of putting college money into a 529 college savings account. Wisconsin EdVest is just such a plan.
You get a big tax breaks on the money, but what happens when it's finally time to take the money out? Our Leah Lynchide says financial experts at Consumer Reports say there are smart ways to do that as well.
When Kim Johnson's daughter, Isabel, was born, Kim began putting money into a 529 college savings plan. And although it's hard for Kim to believe, Isabel is now a college freshman, and it's time to start taking money out of her 529, which is a little more complicated than Kim expected.
We just thought, you know, it's there. It's a bucket of money that we've been saving. And most recently, we're starting to learn that there are some strings attached and rules.
Rules that are important to follow, according to the financial team at Consumer Reports, if you want to avoid hefty penalties.
If you don't spend the money on legitimate 529 expenses, you'll pay income tax on the earnings in the 529 and a 10% penalty on the amount you saved.
Legitimate 529 expenses include obvious things like tuition and supplies, books and computers. But you can also use the money toward room and board if you're enrolled in school at least half-time. As you spend, be sure to keep all of your receipts. The IRS may have questions later. And be aware that when you spend the money also matters.
You need to spend the money in the same year that you make the withdrawal. That means the calendar year, not the school year.
And if you're lucky enough to have leftover 529 funds, avoid taxes and penalties by saving it for graduate school or transferring the money to another child, a cousin, or even to further your own education. For WISC News 3, this is Leah Lynchide.
And Consumer Reports also says sometimes you can even use 529 money towards education costs for students in kindergarten through 12th grade, but only up to $10,000 per student per year.
Be sure to check with your plan administrator to find out what's covered in the plan you choose.
My guess is you're not going to have leftover 429 money.
No, you have to ask a lot of questions. Yeah.
All right, still coming forward, just because it's the dead of winter doesn't mean our farmers are not busy.
Boy, that's for sure. If you have any farm or ag-related questions, pick up the phone. Our farm director, Pam Bianchi, there she is. She'll be in the studio with us tonight taking your calls live. That's when Live at 4 continues.
270-9933.
Well, on First Alert Traffic, good news, at least as far as the Beltline is concerned. Traffic's moving pretty steadily, even though the road is wet. Doesn't seem to be icy, at least in any position that we could find there. Seeing no delays along the Beltline. Some delays through the Isthmus on East Washington Avenue, and then also a few delays on northbound Stoughton Road heading north of the Beltline. But as far as travel times are concerned, it's 16 minutes in either direction between University Avenue and I-3990. If you're heading out of Madison, the usual 27 minutes down to Janesville on I-3990 from the Beltline. It's 16 minutes to Sauk City on US 12 and 20 minutes out to Sun Prairie on US 151 and East Washington Avenue. That is your First Alert Traffic.
All right, Gary, thank you. A Taiwanese artist has created a tiny sculpture representing the well-known fable of the three little pigs to welcome in the Year of the Pig in the lunar calendar. The tiny sculptures have been placed on a grain of rice, and each measure just 1 millimeter long at their longest edge. Each year, the artist's sculptures have become smaller and smaller. Now 63, he's been doing this since he was 25 years old.
That's incredible.
That's a steady hand.
Yes, it is.
That's one I don't have. All right. Pam Yockey's here now.
I can't see it with, I can't write my own checks, let alone I need a...
Good to see you.
Good to see you guys. I guess Happy New Year. I haven't seen you since.
Happy New Year. Yeah, it's been a
good
while.
to see you. We're taking your calls for Pam at 270-9933.
Busy time of the year for farmers. You wouldn't think so.
Well, no, but this is the time of the year when we're out doing our meetings. In fact, we got a big one that starts tomorrow at the Monona Terrace Convention Center. They call it Dairy Strong. So Wednesday and Thursday, dairy producers are going to be there talking a lot about what we've all been talking about for the past 6 months or so, and that's declining milk prices and the challenges our farmers are up against and trying to figure out how they can keep their family farms intact and just kind of keep moving ahead. So that's this week. We got Farmers Union this weekend in Appleton talking about consolidation and concentration in agriculture. So yeah, we're going to keep moving.
I always think about our dairy farmer friends when it's 41 below zero.
Gotta go milk those cows.
Wow.
2-3 times a day, regardless.
You don't shut it off. They're going to be. Yep, they're going to be out there.
All right, you are a popular lady, so let's get to the calls. We'll start with Mary in Dodgeville. Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Hi. What's your question?
I have a question and a comment. The question is, are colored calves always Holstein?
Nope, colored calves are the beef breeds. When I say Holstein bull calves, Holstein heifer calves, that be the black and whites. When we say colored calves, that's basically all other breeds. So it could be a brown Swiss and beef. It's just a beefier type calf.
Oh, okay.
All right.
My comment is, Mark, there's no such word as cheeses.
Cheeses.
Please pass that on to your dairy.
All right, thank you.
Mary.
All right, let's go to Betty now in Madison. Hi, Betty.
Hi. I was just wondering if we might be past peak for the big dairy corporations or whatever. The government has a huge surplus of cheese. Plus, I don't think I'm paying too much more for a gallon of milk than I did 30 years ago.
Yeah, you're right on that for sure, Betty. The price on milk, as far as consumers are concerned, hasn't really fluctuated too very much at all. It continues to go down when people do food surveys, the Farm Bureau, et cetera. Milk price, dairy products, it could be cheese, it could be sour cream. They continue to go down, which reflects what's been happening for a long time on our Wisconsin dairy farms. To your point about surplus, yes, we've got a lot of cheese. Now, let me tap the brakes here there for a moment, because the cheese that is the surplus is basically the American processed cheese. We call it commodity cheese, the cheese that would end up going to nursing home, or well, I should say nursing homes, a school system, assistance or the nutrition and assistance programs. It's not the cheese that our Wisconsin cheesemakers are so very proud of and do. When our Wisconsin cheesemakers make cheese, they usually already have an order for that cheese. So our specialty cheese industry in Wisconsin has been holding on real well despite this nasty downturn in the milk price. But to your point, yes, consumers are continuing to capitalize on low dairy product prices all the way around. We just got to kind of keep moving our way through the surplus if we can.
Do you think this preponderance of plant milks, nut milks,
it doesn't help.
Is
it
having
doesn't
an
help.
impact?
Yeah, it doesn't help. And the biggest problem is, pardon me, the confusion in the marketplace. And tomorrow, Dairy Business Association is going to release a survey that they did that shows how confused consumers are by the almond milk, the rice milk, all of that kind of stuff. They don't know what the difference is. They think they're getting the same protein when in reality they are not. And it's very expensive to turn that into a plant-based beverage. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. I do what I can, but obviously I've got to talk more. What do you got?
All right, let's go to Butch in Westfield. Hi, Butch.
Hey, kids.
Hi, what's on your
and
mind?
when you have livestock up,
yeah,
is the price on the right-hand side, is that per animal or
No.
per 100 pounds?
It's per pound. Yeah, it'd be, if you want to do it dollars, it'd be probably like $50 per 100 pounds. I always say per pound, 50 cents per pound or something like that, because then the farmer knows about what size animal that they sold. That's another sad situation that nobody's talking about. We've got a lot of livestock out there that's really not worth the money to truck them into the livestock yard. Holstein bull calves, heifer calves, they're just about worth zip. And now it's a question on, does farm want to keep them around, or do they want to just basically euthanize them and put them down and be rid of it? That's the sad, sorry situation that a lot of our livestock owners are facing. You've got cows that are just not worth the trucking fee. I had a guy tell me that he shipped a 1,100-pound milk cow and he got $5 after all the fees were done. So that, again, folks, I really want you to, it rips at my soul, because I was a kid of the 80s on the farm, and this feels very much the same. People keep telling me, oh, no, this isn't like the 80s. Yeah, if you lived through it, this feels a lot like the 80s. The only difference is our interest rates are much, much lower than they were back in the 80s.
We're almost out of time, but Jim's on the phone. He wants to know how you can help farmers. Is there a way?
I think the best thing you can do is what we've kind of been talking about. Donate to your food pantry, donate milk. There's a gentleman that I've been working with in Baraboo that's been trying to get volumes of milk donated to the food pantries. Anything that we can do to try to give it, get access off. And then Harvest of Hope is another faith-based group that's here, based in Madison, but helps farmers all across the state do simple things like pay electric bills. And on the farm, the electric bill is a big one.
Yep.
So Harvest of Hope, if you just Google it, like I said, it's a Madison faith-based group that's been working since the 80s. So that's all I can kind of get in this much time,
Go
guys.
buy some milk.
Well, and thanks to you for all you do for our farmer friends.
I just wish I had more time to really explain the whole story.
Well,
but
come
yeah,
back. Come back as often as you want.
All right, Pam. We'll see you at noon tomorrow. All right. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for everybody for calling. And we'll be right back with a final check of your forecast. You might want to get an early start tomorrow.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a mess, I'm sure. Snow is breaking up pretty rapidly now through much of southern Wisconsin. That changeover from freezing drizzle to snow is starting to take place. Visibilities continue to drop. Madison went from 4 miles to 1.5 miles visibility just during the show, and now we're starting to see visibilities less than a mile out to the west and south. We're looking at about 5 to 10 inches of snow through tomorrow morning. Winter storm warnings in effect till 9 a.m. for areas west of Lone Rock, till noon for the rest of us. Temperatures right now in the lower 20s, and as those temperatures drop, wind chills will go down, and we'll see more snow.
A lot of events canceled for this evening.
Yeah.
Check on the bottom of your screen. All right, Gary, thank you.
Sure.
And coming up tomorrow here on Live at 4, are you at odds with your significant other over finances? Well, you're not alone. We'll get some coping tips.
And 2 San Francisco men went from drug dealing in gangs to foodies. We'll have this savory success story coming up tomorrow on Live at 4.